All right, let's get the show on the road. Hi, everybody. This is Lenny Murphy. Welcome to the final session of the Festival of NewMR, part of Innovation Day, brought to you by Greenbook, NewMR, Gen 2 Advisors, and the Insight Innovation Exchange, which you're going to be hearing a lot more about in the next few days. This final session is about the secrets of innovative startups, 5 presentations on the DNA of success. So we've recruited 5 entrepreneurs who are creating disruption in the market research space. They're going to share with you their experience in starting up companies and impart some of their secrets to you. We're honored to have Adriana Rocha, co-founder and president of EC Global Solutions, Matt Warta, CEO of GutCheck, David Brudenell, EVP of Pure Profile, David Johnson, CEO of Dakota, and Chad Neusmeyer, CEO of Raw Data. Bill, if you can advance to the next slide, please. Will, I'm not seeing the slide. Oh, there we go. All right. So kicking us off, Adriana Rocha. The way this is going to work, just for the audience, we have one mega deck. So each presenter is going to present their section, then hand it over to the next person. They have 10 minutes. We're going to try and condense it to less than that, and then have a brief period of question and answer at the end. Adriana, please kick us off.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lenny. It's a real pleasure being here today, part of this Innovation Day and this great initiative of the NewMR Festival. And I'm really happy to have this opportunity to share a little bit about one of my passions. It's about running EC Global and wanting to be a change agent for the market research and consumer insights industry. So this very quick presentation, I'll try to be very briefly in the next maximum 10 minutes, share a little bit about the early stage of a startup, what I think that are the key success factors and opportunities that startups really face in this early stage. Next slide, please. So every great startup starts with a great idea, but we need much more than a great idea to succeed. Next slide. So once you have a great idea in the early stage, it's really important to have a great leadership. If you can change the slide, please. Yeah, so a great leader to run a very innovative startup is really important. So in the early stage, we need to bring together a team, people who you can inspire, who you can motivate, and then this great leader needs to put together this talented team. Can you please return to the previous slide? Yeah, just talking about the team, because when you need to bring together a great team to work in a startup, you need to find the right people. And it's really important because it's not every type of people that adapt to a startup environment. So if it's important to bring people challenge-oriented, and I strongly recommend that every startup try to put together a diversity team, and multicultural if possible, because nowadays, even that we actually in specific markets or industries, we compete on a global level. So having a multicultural team is very important to succeed nowadays, I believe, in any startup, especially in technology startups. Yeah, next slide, please. So once you have the team, you have the leader, you need to prove your concept. And then, we have the new challenge and some new challenge for the startups. Next slide. Yeah. So once you have the product and you need to introduce into the market, my recommendation is that think global. It's very important to, to monitor what is happening at a global level in your industry or what your competitors in a global level are doing, and have a focused strategy, to start acting in your specific local market or in your specific industry. So having this balance about the combination of having a global thinking but having the capability to act local in your very focused market is very important for a startup. Yeah, next slide. And nowadays with social media, with mobile technology, build a strong network is really important and can help a lot new startups to succeed. So when I mean about build your networks, about bringing partners, about making connections that can be relevant to a startup. So you can put together, for example, partners and bring to your startup capabilities and expertise that in the early stage you necessarily will not be able to have in-house. So explore a lot the capability to connect with the right people, to connect with partners, and to help your startup succeed. Yep, next slide. Of course, that mistakes will happen, but it's just part of the process. Making mistakes and learning from the mistakes is part of the growth. So when you fail, just move on and try to learn with that. So if you don't fail, if you don't make mistakes, you not grow. So it's part of the startup process, growth. So yeah, it's just about learning and grow process. As you make mistakes and you learn of that, and then go to the next level. And it's very important to focus. Once you have your product launched to the market, once you have a great marketing strategy, yeah, you can please go to the next slide. It's very important to focus on your client experience. So when you build your startup, you need really to build a happy client base, and focus on the experience. So your clients will continue purchasing from you, you recommend your company, and it's very important in this early stage that you really create this strong relationship with your client base. So focus on your clients, and then it's, for every company, but for startups, it's even more important on this early stage to really start building this client experience and happy clients to recommend your startup and your products. Yep, next slide. And of course, innovation is a continuous process. So you never need to be afraid to continue innovating. Please, next slide. And think out of the box. So you should put together within your team, within your process, a continuous idea generation in a continual process of innovating and of thinking outside the box and thinking new, so your startup can continue evolving and growing. Next slide. Thank you. That's it that I want to share with you for now.
Thank you, Adriana. Matt, you're up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Lenny? Awesome.
Yep.
Well, hey, thanks, Lenny, for inviting me to Innovation Day. And Matt Warta, I am the CEO and co-founder of GutCheck. And I've been in this role for the last 3 years. Prior to that, I was in the venture capital industry for about 10 years. And then prior to that, I was an entrepreneur with another company. So what I plan to talk about today is kind of disruptive technology and kind of the implications that has for you as a startup entrepreneur, and also kind of what you might find in not only the market research industry, but other industries that are trying to adopt disruptive technology. Am I forwarding these, Lenny? I'm sorry. There you go. Thank you. So this is a quote from a friend of mine who I started my first company with, and it's the notion that if it isn't contentious, it probably isn't worth doing. And I think what he meant by this is that you are going to upset somebody in the industry value chain if you have a truly disruptive idea. So if you're planning on creating a lot of innovation, and you ask yourself the question, is my idea a big idea like Adriana was saying, and is it disruptive? I think you need to kind of use this as a litmus test. If nobody in the value chain finds your idea contentious, it's probably not innovative enough. Scott, for example, here is creating therapeutic proteins in rice plants. And that's very different than the way things are done today. They tend to be developed with cells from mice and big capital-intensive plants. And he's really kind of disrupting the value chain. There's a lot of people in the value chain that have a lot to lose, but if he wins, the industry wins big, and so does he. Please go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of what incremental improvement looks like versus disruption. So hit the next slide. It's a build slide. So this is kind of what incremental improvement looks like. And if you look at the y-axis, that's really kind of value creation over time. And value creation might be a number of different things. It might be cost savings built up over time. It might be kind of in the market research industry. It might be the time to get an answer. And then obviously the X is the time axis here. And this is what incremental improvement looks like. And if you look at the industry we play in, or the part of the industry we play in, which is more kind of the online qualitative world, this has kind of been the line over the last 5 or so years. There's a number of people that came in early that created some disruption, but over time it's kind of been a really kind of incremental approach to kind of increase the value. Go to the next build. One more. So this is what disruption looks like if you provide really disruptive, innovative technology to an industry. There's really kind of a step change in the value that's created, and in our case, that's us kind of really kind of changing the paradigm in terms of how quickly it takes to get a study done and kind of the affordability of that study. And the great thing about value creation like this is that you can share it with the customers in the industry. And if you share enough of it and you provide enough value, then you should be able to gain a lot of customers. So in theory, this looks great, but why doesn't it work sometimes? Next slide, please. So it's not easy being disruptive. Certainly because of that contentious thing I mentioned earlier, not everyone will like you. This is an actual quote from a LinkedIn group. I'm not going to name who the group was, but you can see kind of the reaction that we got from this one person. You know, kind of this ludicrous notion of what we're doing. And the funny thing is, you know, this guy thought we were the enemy, and we thought this person was the customer. So you can kind of see how when you do disruptive things like this, there's kind of this perception versus reality. A lot of people get uneasy about what you're doing. And you know, I think the takeaway here for this is find some innovators out there. You've got to start with the innovators if you're going to build a business over the long term. Not everybody's going to like you from the beginning, but if you have cool disruptive technology that creates a lot of value, you will find some innovators to latch on to. The other thing is building new muscles is painful. And for most new, innovative, disruptive technologies, the customer set has to create some new muscles in order to use you. You're changing behavior. There's actually a great book out right now called The Power of Habit. I'm sure many of you have probably read about it. But in it, they talk about that 40% of the things that we do every day are not a function of decisions. They're purely out of habit. And that's just that kind of muscle memory we build over time. We don't need to make a decision because it's so easy to fall back to what we've used in the past. And I think, again, the takeaway here is the people that want to build new muscles are the innovators in the industry. So again, when you're at those earlier stages of launching your technology and launching your business, find the innovators that are out there. And the last thing is don't pay attention to this last bullet point. The hit rate is really tough. 75% of startups fail. I think most of the folks that are on this panel here are kind of well beyond that. They've gotten through the hard years, let's say, and kind of are hopefully kind of all on their path to really creating kind of an interesting business. But I think the key thing here is just, you know, having a lot of conviction about what you're doing and understanding that it's just going to take a lot of perseverance and time to kind of work through things. So why should we do this? Please go to the next slide. So why do we do it? You know, one of the really great things about being an entrepreneur, and I think this is hopefully kind of universal throughout the globe, is everybody's rooting for the entrepreneur and everybody wants to help. I've been amazed and incredibly humbled by the number of people that have helped me build this company, whether it was through finding the talent on our team here today, finding customers, finding capital to fund our company. It's just been amazing at the help that you'll receive. And as an entrepreneur, there's kind of a code here that you have to give back. So the takeaway here is when you're starting your business, build that network that Adriana was talking about, and go find other entrepreneurs that have done it before, because they will help. And also this next bullet point is believe in your dream. If you truly create an innovative and disruptive company, economics matter in most businesses, and kind of market research, which is kind of more B2B, and I think that is especially true, that economics matter, and that has a lot of implications in terms of how you build your business. Remember that it's going to be a marathon and not a sprint. This is going to play out over 5 to 7 years before you're really, really, truly successful. And we've been at this for a little over 3 years now, and we're really starting to see that kind of economic value proposition really take hold and start from kind of the top of the companies on down. And the last point is that that one shot down the middle of the fairway will definitely keep you coming back for more. And those of you who play golf or just hack around like I do know what I mean. And in the business context, that's finding a great customer, a forward-leaning customer, where you just knock it out of the park, and they're incredibly happy, and it keeps you coming back every day. And I think, again, the implication here is find that kind of core set of early customers, 5 or so innovative customers in the industry that you can be incredibly honest with in terms of what your capabilities are, but also where you're going, and allow those people to help you. Allow them to help you build out your product. Allow them to help you kind of build out your network within their company and others. So those are my remarks, Lenny. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it very much. David Brudenell, you are up.
Hi, Lenny, and to all the listeners out there, my name is David Brudenell. I'm the Executive Vice President of Pure Profile, and when Lenny asked me to join up onto this chat this afternoon, I thought it was quite timely, as I've just completed the first 24 months in our journey in the United States with Pure Profile and launching a new brand, and simultaneously launching a new product. So what I'm going to do today is take you through some of my shared experiences over the past 24 months, specifically in the U.S. market, and then also tell you about what I've done right and what I've done wrong. So next slide, please. But before we get into the detail, I thought I'd just explain very briefly what we're trying to do at Pure Profile. So we've been in the sample business for more than a decade out of Australia and out of Europe. And we decided 4 years ago to change our business and move more towards big data. And we've produced a new, what we're calling a research-led CRM system that single sources customer data across multiple channels and makes that data much more liquid between organizations and within organizations. So really what I'm going to do today is take you through this product journey and what I've defined as the 6 key pillars or the 6 key activities that we focus on at Pure Profile. Next slide, please. Now the first area, and this is probably all of the panel today will want to talk about this or have this in the back of your mind, is vision. And that's something that's very important to us at Pure Profile. I can say with my hand on my heart that over the past 11 years, the core vision of our company hasn't changed. We're still trying to solve 2 problems, one a consumer problem and one a business problem. And that vision really focuses our decision making within the company. And staying true to that keeps us on that path that we originally envisioned all those years ago. Now, I'm a big believer that vision actually has some sub-layers to it. And really at Pure Profile, we've kind of defined these into four main areas. The first one is applied knowledge. And I make it my business to really understand the various industries that we touch at Pure Profile. And that means understanding how a chi-square test is calculated, what a regression means, but simultaneously how a MySQL server works. So you're able to take these kind of varying different areas and weave them together into a tapestry that is your business. And this applied knowledge, you really need to expect this out of your team. You need to have your developers understand market research, and you need to have your market researchers understand development. And that can sometimes be a challenging task. The second thing is operational structures. And at Pure Profile, we've really focused our business around paying the bills, which is our more traditional sample business, which we've tried to keep as lean as possible. But we wanted to be a disruptive company. We wanted to release new products. So we've built our business really around an R&D entity, where around 60 to 70% of our business at any one time is focused on research and development. So you need to be able to structure your business to be able to be agile, but at the same time, like Matt said, you need to look towards those economic outcomes for you and your investors. The third thing around vision is team inclusion. This is probably the most important part of the vision equation, and you need to be able to be the senior developer. You need to let them know that they're part of this journey with you, and you need to be very clear on what role they are playing in contributing to that journey. And then the final, and this is what I believe is probably the most important, is that, you know, vision by itself is just a dream. You need to have a roadmap. You need to have a very clear way that you're going to achieve your outcomes. And by having this roadmap, you're able to allow it to be inclusive within the organization, to bring everyone together to work towards that single goal. Next slide, please. Now, the second area that we've been focusing on is really looking at insight from inefficiencies. And one of the advantages we had as a business is, you know, being in the sample game, we were privy to pretty much the entire value chain of the market research process. And we really looked for those areas where our clients, our client partners were telling us were painful. And we're looking at how we can improve those areas and how that fits into our overall vision. Now, here's just, again, a piece of advice that we've learned, especially over the past 4 years, is that you have to be very, very careful about what inefficiencies that you're selecting from the industry. And the reason why I say that is that because many clients make large fiscal investments into particular programs and platforms and methodologies, and these need to be amortized over a longer period. So even though, although a researcher or a finance person will complain that that these areas are painful to them, nothing's going to change. They still need to amortize those across between a 1 to 5 year period. So be really aware about what inefficiencies that you're going to be tackling or what improvements that you're going to be bringing to industry. Next slide, please. Now, this particular area, or this pillar, kind of user experience, is what excites me. This is what gets me up every single morning and really makes me want to bring kind of disruptive things and products to clients. You may not know, this is Dieter Rams. He's the head UX for Braun back in the 60s. You probably never heard of him, but everyone probably has a Braun product in their business, and he was famous for bringing user design to the white goods and brown goods industries. And this has been an area in our business, especially over the past 3 years, that we've invested in, and that we've actually it's really fundamentally changed the way that we're engaging with clients, and that we're building and bringing products more quickly to the marketplace. And it was kind of built on the whole idea that really today, data storage and development is relatively cheap, but a beautiful and functional user interface is actually priceless. And this is what our clients and what industry is looking for, because that is actually what propels the actual innovation within our clients' businesses. Next slide, please. And the investment in UX, and here's another little experience that I can share from Pure Profile, is when we were building out our UX team, one of the areas that we look to, that we've been quite successful in actually finding talent, is industrial engineers coming out of university. They have a lot of very complementary skills for UX, and we've had great success in building the UX team. And it's this UX team which has actually brought forward the operational innovation, which has propelled our business more quickly than ever before. And this is what we call internally, which is rapid prototyping. And rapid prototyping is essentially, kind of to walk you through experience, is myself or one of my team members will go sit down with the client, we'll talk through the opportunity, through the issues, and what we'll do is we'll then go to one of the widely available specifications tools that you can find on Macs and PCs. We'll build a very rough, or a non-technical person will build a very rough specification and pass this across to our UX team. Now, within 24 hours, we're able to provide our clients back essentially a full HTML version of what we envisioned. And this is really exciting because not only are our competitors going back with kind of big, heavy documents that take a lot of imagination, we're able to conversely, walk in the door 24 hours later and have a product that's almost there. And now what we're doing is we're elevating the conversation from paper to action, and we're able to iteratively improve the front end rapid prototype from there forward. So this has been a really exciting area of our business that we've moved forward with, and that has actually accelerated the growth of our business over here domestically. Next slide, please. And with rapid prototyping and with the operational structures, everything that we try and do at Pure Profile, we try to do for scale. That's one of the reasons why we decided to invest in a platform, because once we've sunk that technical expense, it now gives us the ability to be very agile and fast on top of this platform. We're able to build custom applications, DIY applications. We're able to engage with partners in a new and different way. And really, at the end of the day, we're moving more towards, or the focus is more towards, higher margin activities or higher value activities. Next slide, please. And really the final pillar that we focus on at Pure Profile, and we try and remind ourselves every day, is that your business changes, the industry changes so quickly that you have to be willing and be able, in terms of your operational structures, to pivot the business when necessary. And to share an experience over the past 24 months, Pure Profile has been in the sample game for 10 years. We're the market leader in Australia, and we play a good, solid role in Europe. And when we came to the United States, we thought this would be a part of our business. And we pay the highest in the world. We invest a lot of design, and it is a big investment for our sample business. Now, coming to the United States, because of the explosion in inventory, the times of austerity domestically that we're kind of living in, and the movement of river sample and other lower cost opportunities for sample, that pressured the price in the industry. So really, we were outpriced in many areas. Now, dropping the price was against our principles, because we wanted to reward our users the highest in the world. So it was a difficult decision that I had to make, but really what I had to do was I had to restructure the operations over here to focus on our more higher value opportunities in our platform business. So you really have to focus on, and you have to have the bravery to pivot when necessary. And I use the word bravery because it has courage in the background, which means that there's rational thought behind why you're making that change. Next slide, please. So really, with the industry and how we look at disrupting is, what I like to think about is the market research industry at the moment, it's in black and white. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring color to the industry. And that means more opportunities, that means different engagement types, and that means new tools to work with existing data types. So really, my experience with the past 24 months has been one that is always in flux. And it's these kind of key principles that you focus on: vision, insight from inefficiencies, user experience, rapid prototyping, scale, and the bravery to pivot, which has allowed us to be successful into this market. Next slide, please. So if there's anyone who wants to talk about the platform, or would like to know more about our experiences here in the United States, I'd be happy to speak to you. So thanks very much for listening, and Lenny, back to you.
Thank you, David. The bravery to pivot. I love that. David Johnson, you're going to tell us another part of this story. So you are up, my friend.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Lenny? Can everybody hear me?
Unmuted.
We can hear you just fine.
You're good, David.
Okay, good. All right, great.
Muted.
Thank you for getting any feedback. Thanks, everybody. It's a great opportunity to be here today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share a couple of insights with you with regard to the lessons learned that we've kind of fell upon as we've been evangelizing big data solutions to help make brand marketing a stronger, basically create more value within organizations today. So this is really, to some extent, a reflection of what Matt was talking about a little bit earlier, but more from a client perspective. That's kind of the position that we're taking here. So next slide, please. So our reason for being is that what we want to do is we want to essentially be in a position to bring big data to clients and provide valuable insights that really allow organizations to be able to predict consumer behaviors and market outcomes. And we do this by analyzing essentially all unstructured and structured data in real time. And our ability to do this, we believe, will help us provide organizations a new method by which they can really revolutionize organizational decision-making within each of their domains. And so as we bring these solutions to the market, it seems to us what we see is that this is a disruptive technology, and organizations, to some extent, want to believe that data will tell the story to them, and that as we integrate more and more data, that somehow what's important will just emerge organically. And they often believe that using existing methods or perhaps new engineering-driven analytical pattern matching techniques will allow them to answer these elusive questions. And these assumptions are, generally speaking, pretty wrong as we look at all the new things that we have coming to us in the form of data. And we find our early successes now are highly dependent upon identifying these organizational pirates that are driven to challenge conventional wisdom that exists within these organizations in an attempt to really try and change the world or move the organizational mountain. And our belief is that history has taught us that these leaders among the businesses that we're working with are the ones that really kind of drive and shape the industries that we're in. And we think that the key to our success is really engaging with these organizational pirates and getting them motivated to help drive change within organizations. So as hard as it is to build a company that's disruptive, it's equally difficult to identify who the people are that you're going to engage with within these organizations to help you get over the hump of convincing the world that this new disruptive technology is really going to change the way things should be done going forward. Next slide. So for us, when we engage with people today, the first thing that we typically have to do is we have to talk about the fact that it's not necessarily about the data. It's more about the questions that they have and understanding what it is that they really want to focus on within their organization. Because an understanding of the questions that need to be answered will really help us guide our strategies and how we deploy and make use of data that exists within our organization. It'll also help us understand better understand what are the things that really do create value for us versus the things that don't create value for us. Next slide. And as we talk with people and we have this conversation about questions, in many cases, the pirates that we talk to within these organizations, they're the first ones that tell us, a lot of what we do here is really kind of the research justifies a preconceived narrative that we just want to support within our organization. And sometimes information emerges, but in order for it to become actionable, you really need someone that's willing to take that and drive it throughout the organization to make it more useful or have it gain traction among all the other things that are currently being done within organizations. And so for us, it's really about identifying these appropriate folks and then making sure that we get people that understand that it's really not about identifying and supporting the narrative. It's really about rethinking how we actually want to approach the data-driven challenges that organizations have. Next slide. So when we look at big data should be a pathway to simplification, but in many cases, it really just creates more complexity within organizations today. And it seems like we often get lost in the engineering side of what it is that we're doing. Now that we have more data, there's more variables. So there's more information for us to look at, and there's more information for us to consider. And when we bubble this information up organically within these organizations, in many cases, it just creates more confusion. Also, the people that are responsible for doing some of this new innovative engineering work, unfortunately, they don't often have the domain skills that allow them to really understand what they should be focusing on from a variable standpoint. So when we talk to clients today, one of the things that we're talking about is that the analysis of data is no longer, the domain of or falling under the responsibility of one domain. In many cases, it's interdisciplinary, where we're looking at a wide variety of skills that we bring to the table to help us understand what are those questions that we should focus on, what are the things that are most important in driving those questions, what are the variables that are the greatest leading indicators that give us visibility into what's moving the needle for us. And so it's not about more variables, it's about the right variables. And it's about getting people to rethink the process. And when we do that right, and when we get people to reconsider, looking at the questions and then re-looking at what all the different variables are that we need to focus on through this interdisciplinary lens, then we get to the point where we're actually able to identify and distinguish between success and failure more easily, and we can begin to simplify the challenges that brands have. Next slide. So once we've convinced organizations to go down this path of rethinking the process, starting with the questions, bringing the right resources to the table, then we need to drive organizational changes around how we leverage that data within organizations. So what we find often is that even though we bring valuable insights into the organization, how the organization internalizes that information and their willingness to actually listen to the data is really, really valuable in terms of understanding our ability to create value for clients. Because we can create great insights, but then they need to have a process by which they can leverage that information to drive decision-making going forward. In many cases, this starts very small within organizations where we have targeted activities that we work on within an organization, and we might have several different things taking place simultaneously. And our goal then is to weave that together to bring together the bigger story around how we actually drive more transformational changes within an organization. We just do it in a way that's incremental going forward. So we really have to think about the questions. When we deliver better insights, then we need to work with organizations and leverage these pirates to drive the change within these organizations so that we get people to listen to the better data that we have access to today so we can use that to our advantage. Next slide. But that's challenging for these pirates, right? Because we have our best practices that have been, honed over the years, and it's often difficult to look in the face of that and say, that's wrong. And we need these people to turn around and challenge the organization and say, although we have best practices, although we have methods in place, we really need to reconsider it all and say what's possible. And so this becomes the biggest challenge for us, I think. It's really all about identifying these people inside these organizations that are constantly challenging, the status quo and pushing the organizations to adapt to all the new things that are being brought forward to these organizations by way of suppliers and new innovative entrepreneurs as we go forward. So next slide. So from an organizational standpoint, when we talk to clients, we are very vocal about saying, it's about identifying these risk takers, these pirates within organizations that we can identify as heroes for us to help us evangelize what it is that we do in the context of their businesses, but then work with leadership teams within those organizations to recognize these heroes that exist throughout the company. And we need to focus on really recognizing these people for who they are and their contribution to business going forward, because these are the people that are going to help us move mountains and really create the value that's on the table for these organizations to take advantage of. So next slide. That's really all I wanted to go through today. So I'm happy to share this deck with anybody if you want to send me an email at djohnson@dakota.com. Thanks for your time, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, David. So guys, we've been on a journey. We've heard about the initial aspects of starting a business. We've heard about the creating disruption and the challenges of staying the course. We've heard about creating scale and having the courage to pivot. We've heard about the client's perspective on how do we engage with clients effectively to embrace new solutions. Now we're going to hear about what's on a lot of people's minds when they first start the business, and that is, well, what the hell is it worth? What's the valuation? Where do we get to the value of the business? So Chad, it is your turn to wrap us up, and then we're going to move into a discussion.
Great. And just to verify, everybody can hear me, right?
Yes, you're good.
Good. So a little bit about raw data. We're a cross-platform, single-source data collection firm, and what that means for the uninitiated is that we, from a single panelist, gather data regarding TV, radio, mobile, computer, web. All that consumption comes from a single source, and then we process that and present it. Kind of jumping into it, though, from a startup perspective, Clayton Christensen put it the best, and he basically categorizes all three startups into three categories. He says the first is efficiency innovations. They just make somebody's job smoother and faster. And then There's a sustaining innovation that replaces an old product with a new business model. And then the third one is an empowering innovation. And this is what you think of when there's cataclysmic industry changes and everything along those lines. And in startups, there's two schools of thought right now, is that one, among others, but one is that you should bootstrap the company and never raise any money. And then the other one is that you take on outside investors and you take these investors and you build industry-changing businesses. And I think where you really need to raise capital still, even in this world of cloud computing and super efficient business models, are in a lot of these empowering innovations, where you really are changing the way people think. And so that is kind of the segue into valuations. And when you're raising money, you have to literally put a value on the business. Let's go to the next slide. So a friend of mine actually phrased this, and I'm going to steal a lot of his slides in this first half of the presentation. So he talks about the valuation. What is the value of the business? And he says it's the vision of hope minus the dreadfulness of fact. And everybody's talked about this today, is that you're running a startup. You're literally beating your head against the wall, trying to change traditional thoughts and methods and the way it's always been done. And so how do you overcome the facts of business? And that's through hope. We all have hope that our business can affect large-scale change in the world and make it a better place. And then let's go to the next slide. If you think about your high school economics class where you had the demand curves and all of that, that's what Mark actually started to do, is he put all of this down on a curve so that we could look at it. And he said that his goal is to actually keep that 70% of his valuation is based on hope. And then, the remaining 30% is on facts. And so what you see is time progresses, the stage of the business progresses, and the stage of their financing progresses, and hope begins to decline, and then the facts start to come out. And Pure Profile actually talked about bravery to pivot. And I'm going to bring that up a little bit more in the discussion. But as time progresses, hope starts to go down. And so what you need to do is pivot and expand the business model. Let's go to the next slide. And so you actually have to shift the curves and start adjusting the business model on it. And there's some really classic examples of this. Let's go to the next slide. Some of the recent IPOs, you've got Facebook, 50 exit IPO, roughly 90% hope and 10% fact. And this is just one man's opinion, right? So take it for what it's worth. But we're seeing a lot of examples of this, and a lot of it has implications in the research industry. So I think there's a lot of optimism about ways to better owners or general business cases and driving information and insight into that. And Mark finishes off his presentation with this next slide, and he says, as the CEO of a company, let's go to the next slide. In a startup, you have to do whatever you can to keep hope alive, because literally you're flying without a parachute. And so do anything and everything possible to keep the business running. So where we're at in our business stage, and we're actually in the process of shifting that hope and that fact curve. So I started looking at it and thought about different ways to shift that curve. Let's go down a slide here. How do we move that line? What are some implications in the business that will cause that to happen? And let's go to the next slide. I think to understand that, you actually have to look at, how do you share the vision on the business? If only it was as easy as just like in Men in Black, putting our arms around each other and showing them the way we see the world. But it gets complicated because we spend our lives in spreadsheets and PowerPoints and phone calls and presentations. So often, and maybe it's a little cliche, we're in the forest looking at the individual tree, and we don't step back and really gather the vision efficiently or effectively enough to share it with those that know little to nothing about it. And this is a real problem. And the best way to solve it is to actually step back and look at the individual parties involved. Let's go to the next slide. In the research world, I think it can be pretty easy, but I also think it can be a little more complex, where normally a regular business will have one or two parties whose interests they'll have to align. We have to pull together many, many more. And for the sake of simplicity on a slide, I just put 4. But there's dozens in some businesses that you have to align. You've got obviously investors who want a return on capital. You've got customers or data users, and they want to affect change in their business. You've got panelists, so what are you going to have to give them to part with that information? And then obviously you have your own business interests. And so all of these interests are independent, and oftentimes they're conflicting or opposed. And so how do you start trying to line those up? And I think the biggest lesson we've learned at Raw Data is that by kind of circling around the problem and starting to circulate through that, you can come up with solutions that you can start looking through other people's lenses. I kind of liken this to driving down the freeway in heavy traffic. Not often are you looking through just your windshield, but the windshield of a car in front of you, just to keep an eye on what's going on in traffic. So let's go to the next slide. So one of the things we have to do is, while we're waiting for everything to line up and tee up, we have to prepare the business. That's everything from fundraising, making sure that we have the necessary funds in place, to team building, to defining the exact pitch. You know, what do we think it's going to look like when the stars align? But by looking at the problem through multiple perspectives, you will find a way to line up all the interests. And mine's really simple, is that once that interest is lined up, we have to have everything pre-built. And let's go to the next slide. It's quite literally as simple as taking the shot. So the biggest problem is getting enough time to circle the problem until you can get everything lined up. So time is your enemy. So mine's the shortest, but I'm done. Lenny, it's over to you.
Thank you, Chad. All right, so this has been fantastic, and I really appreciate everybody being on. We do have time for discussion. I'm not seeing any questions on Twitter, but certainly some comments. Not seeing any questions within the GoToWebinar, but I've got a few. So we've got 15 minutes, and well, actually at this point we have 13 minutes, so we need to be right on. So when thinking about where you are in your businesses, and thinking about the rapid pace of change that I think all industries, that the world is going through today, how do you protect yourselves from the black swans? How do you remain flexible as you're building a business around a very specific business model, but be adaptable to new changes that none of us could anticipate? So just thoughts. Anybody jump in? Or I'll call on people.
Hi, Lenny. It's David Brudenell here. That's a really good point. I mean, we hear today about the big IP battles going on with the mega brands out there, and you know, in our experience at Pure Profile, IP has become less and less important. It's more about, from our perspective, I guess, building your operational structures to change, to transform, if necessary, and also, I guess, complementing that with the ability to move really quickly. You know, I talked about rapid prototyping. That's one of the areas that we really work on to keep us ahead of the game and avoid those either copycats or alternatives to what we're putting out to market.
Okay. Matt and Chad, you guys both came from a VC background, so your job was to try and identify these companies and help them grow big really quickly. Often before the bottom of that market may have dropped out, right? So you could cash out and move forward. Now that you're on the other side with building a business, what do you look for in terms of the warning signs that that you need to start pivoting and evolve more before you may be ready to? Oh, Matt,
I'll jump in first. I think a lot of it is what David was talking about, which is kind of having kind of an agile organization. Agile's talked a lot about within software development, but it's also kind of a mindset within a business. And, just kind of reacting in an agile way and being incredibly intellectually honest in terms of where you are. We've had that bravery to pivot a couple times here at GutCheck since we started, and I think a lot of our success is because of that. So I think if you kind of set yourself up with a lot of intellectual honesty and a lot of agility and a lot of kind of open ears when you listen to customers, you're going to be able to adapt pretty well. And a lot of times when we're getting into these things, the bottom falling out is so far down the road, because if you're doing something disruptive, I mean, the industry is going to take a while to get there anyway, and you just have to be prepared to stay at it for a long time. The average startup today, and Chad might have better data on this than I do, but I think it's about 7 years before a company even gets to exit. So if you're starting a company to exit, you better hold on for a while.
Chad, would you agree? What's your take on that?
I don't have better data than Matt, so no. But I have a couple of thoughts on that. Is that I agree with David's comment that IP is becoming less and less important. A lot of what was the way it was done in the research industry was IP-based, but what's actually starting to take precedence now is speed to market. And then to Matt's point, ability to be agile and adaptive. We get requests all the time from customers that it's an entirely new way of bending our data that we'd never thought about. And so you need a team, and I think it was Pure Profile that talked about this. You need a team that can look through all those lenses and adjust it. And then the other thing I think about is that there's a lot of fear and trepidation in the industry, and I almost wonder if that's the new IP, is being able to scare somebody out of doing what they feel is right or is a game changer. And so that's something that we tend to try and work really hard on overcoming, is the fear of people doing different things.
Interesting. Now, Adriana, you're the old hand here. You've been in the industry for a long time and have really led innovation in an emerging market, which I think is even more important to the point. So, from the standpoint of building an organization that is not focused on one specific product or approach per se, but is constantly kind of embracing innovation and driving things forward, how do you measure your success of your mission, and what's the piece where you look at and say, you know what, we are on the right track?
Yeah, Lenny. Yeah, definitely. It's it's a hard work, to be innovative in emerging markets. And for us, it's about believing in your dream, focus on your vision, and being patient, being perseverant, working with clients, and on another perspective, what David was mentioning is very important as well, is to build our internal capability to quickly evolve our products and take some decisions. When's the best time to launch it, and how you can protect your ideas, and because when you're a small startup and you have great ideas and you build technology, we know that it's not that hard to have competitors copying some ideas and so on. So finding that balance, that okay, it's the moment that we can launch this into the market, and we know that we have the capability to continue evolving the product quickly and faster than competitors can copy some of your ideas. And actually we experienced that in AC Global. In our early stages, I went to a conference, a global conference in Europe, and we present some of our ideas and some of our new products in the early stage. And 1 year after, we saw some global providers launching the same ideas and telling that they were, the pioneers and, being the first of launching some of those. So it's, we have challenged on that, but what we've seen is that all of this hard work and investments have been worthwhile, because even in emerging markets, there is some point that clients recognize that they need innovators, they need these disruptive ideas and products so they can evolve as well. So what we are seeing there in Latin America, in Brazil, for example, is that the end clients are pushing, and wanting for providers such as EC Global, that we've been making all of these efforts to help the industry evolve. So yeah, what I can tell is that there will be a moment that all of these the efforts will be recognized and worthwhile, but you need to have perseverance, and work hard and build the internal capability to continue growing and evolving quickly your products.
Thank you. David Johnson, you're probably arguably playing on the bleeding edge of the future of the insights industry at that intersection of big data, text analytics, and cognitive science. I think a lot of folks within the traditional research space would be either dismissive or terrified, or maybe both, of kind of the future that you're trying to paint. How do you work within the status quo while also creating disruption?
It's much like I mentioned in my presentation. It's identifying the people that are willing within organizations that are willing to take a risk with you, taking disruptive technologies and putting it in context that their organizations can understand is absolutely critical. And so, we very much target those people that we believe have the ability to represent these big ideas inside their organizations. And so, they look to us to bring innovation because they see the opportunity. Not everybody in the corporate world wants to move the organizational mountain, and so you have to find those people that really want to make a difference. And not too long ago in the Harvard Business Review, where they talk about big data, there's a gentleman that was an analytics, kind of a mid-level guy at LinkedIn that really ended up changing the face of LinkedIn. And it's because someone was willing to listen to him in spite of the fact that the organizational, kind of the impervious layer of clay that had grown in existence at LinkedIn, even though they're a young company, was pushing back on it. And so somebody had the desire to be a pirate. Somebody, the CEO, had the willingness to listen and recast the company as a result of that insight. So those are the people that we're looking for. And what we find is that early on, these people really do make significant shifts within these organizations, and those successes that come out of those use cases then become the basis for the rest of the world to jump on the bandwagon. And so that's really what you look for, and we've seen that across many different industries, whether it be the supply chain industry or different types of technology, where there's a couple of early adopters and then there's the lemmings. And so when you're a disruptive technology provider, you're looking for the early adopters, the risk takers, the pirates that are there with you, and you're looking to build a method then of educating the rest of the world to buy into it over time.
All right, we have 3 minutes left, and I'd like to, there's a couple things I need to cover at the very end, but I'd like to give each of you a chance to make one final comment. So if you could sum up into 5 words or less a message of hope for other budding entrepreneurs trying to create disruption out there, what would it be? So Adriana, ladies first. 5 words or less, your message of hope.
I love it. Chad's presentation and his last slide. Just keep the hope on higher level in your startup. And it's I think that's bringing clients that believe in your hope, in your dream. It's very important. So keep the hope in high level. I think that's my message, to all entrepreneurs and the people in this industry wanting really to be disruptive and launch innovative startups and concepts.
Thank you, Matt.
You only live once. Do something. do something compelling.
All right. Grab the brass ring. All right. David Brudenell.
Be brave. Just do it.
Okay. And by the way, your bravery to pivot comment is getting lots of play on Twitter, so I think it's a big takeaway. David Johnson.
I think that what I would say is that selling technology is different than capturing enthusiasm from investors. There are two different audiences. If you're going to become an entrepreneur, know how to sell to investors because it's a different audience.
Wise words indeed. Chad.
I think the biggest thing is you've got to be passionate and enjoy it because that will be communicated. It doesn't matter what the logic is. Your passion will bleed through.
Awesome. This has been fantastic. Now, one quick plug I'm going to put out there. You guys have seen this little logo of Insight Innovation. So next week you're going to hear about the formal launch of a new global event initiative called the Insight Innovation Exchange. We will also be launching the Insight Innovation Competition on the 15th. So watch Twitter, watch social media. You'll hear more about that. But all of this day today had a reason behind it. We're going to take this and blow it up really big in 2013. So that's all for the 2012 Festival of NewMR. Visit newmr.org to see the recordings of Training Day and Main Stage. This recording will become available as well next week. Be ready for an exciting 2013. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to our listeners. Have a great weekend and happy holidays. That's it. Bye-bye.